Let us start by summarizing all three readings somewhat. Isaiah's vision speaks of a great ingathering of people from all nations of every language who shall come and seek God's glory. The passage from the letter to the Hebrews speaks of discipline and acknowledges said discipline to be a source, not so much of joy as of pain, but which brings the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who are trained by it. Discipline, in other words, appears to be easier for one who gets training. The Gospel, for its part, further affirms the overriding images of the first two readings by alluding to the need for Christ's followers to strive to enter through the narrow gate, for many will attempt to enter, but will not be strong enough. At a time in history when people go through all imaginable lengths to get what they want, what they dream of and long for, above everything else, with top-seeded athletes enduring hours-long stretches of training and rigorous discipline day after grueling day, when even terrorists spend years casing their targets carefully and meticulously, it definitely sounds refreshing and reinvigorating to hear something that seems to reinforce that which we are already good at, competing, trying to get to the top of the heap, pushing, shoving, or otherwise clawing one's way to the pinnacle of our earthly desires. Ever since the philosopher Descartes and his famous declaration, Cogito ergo sum, I think therefore I am, which became the banner headline and war cry of a movement called the Enlightenment, going for the gold, pulling one's own strings, going out and grabbing for oneself, and being number one became apparently the right thing to do, the foundation stones for rugged individualism pushed to the extreme. So what is wrong with disciplining and training oneself in order to become top dog? Nothing in and of itself, except that if it becomes the end in itself, then all this becomes vanity. All is vanity. Today's readings furthermore tell us we are off the mark, way, way off. Let us unpack a bit the meaning of today's readings. First, Isaiah tells us that the proper starting point is not our personal dream, but that of God's. God's vision, in addition, is one of a great ingathering of peoples and nations. This is not the language of individualism and narrow personal concerns, nor is this the language of exclusivity, but one of inclusivity. Second, the letter to the Hebrews reminds us that this search for the common good, this concern for others, and this drive to go out to all the world to tell the good news is fraught with a lot of trials and therefore needs discipline. Still more, this discipline may cause a lot of pain. And then third, Jesus reminds us that discipleship entails hard work, and that those who are first now will not necessarily keep their title at the end of time. For behold, some are last who will be first, and some are first who will be lost. It is very clear that the need for discipline and training is framed in the context of God's vision for the world. It is clear that the Christian calling to discipleship is primarily a call to social relatedness, social responsibility, in the context not of individualism and a self-centered spirituality, but one that starts and ends with the idea of everyone's belongingness to a community called and gathered by God Himself. In our times, encouraged as we are to do our own thing and look out for oneself at a time when the most coveted items are all personal, religion and spirituality become highly personal and private matters that need not be talked about in public. God becomes a personal commodity to be sought for on one's own, at one's own convenience, at one's own style and pacing. For a great many, this translates to a God that is conveniently and effectively kept at arm's length, in one's closet, in the privacy of one's home, to be consulted only as needed when convenient, when strictly necessary. For those in the opposite extreme, who are very religious but who subscribe to an idea of an equally personal and deeply private faith, discipline and training get reduced to pietistic practices and personal devotion. Their faith never gets beyond what at times may be deemed fanatical and misguided attachments to popular devotions, statues, and images. For the former, God is a personal commodity to be called on as needed. For the latter, God is an intensely private source of solace and consolation, and faith is nothing more, nothing less, and nothing else but private, personal devotion. For such people, personal holiness means spending all-night vigils, doing endless reparatory prayers for sinners all over the world, and trying to appease an angry God whose hands are poised to strike the world in punishment. But today's readings and biblical data as a whole simply do not support such extremes of living one's faith. Both approaches are extremely individualistic and self-centered. Both are really based solely on an individual's dreams for themselves. Both lose sight of God's dream for the world, for all of humanity, including those from whom we might never expect, at least initially, the foreigners, people from the east and the west, and from the north and the south. Today, therefore, is a good time to be reminded of the Catholic Church's best-kept secret, the Catholic social teachings. In essence, said teachings remind us that we all are called to be holy, yes, but holiness in and through our relational selves, in and through our social selves. Holiness, thus, is not a mere pious endeavor that reduces Christian life to personal prayers and personal devotions and mere ritualistic attendance at Masses on Sundays. Holiness, in addition, is not mere personal sanctification, but a participation in God's dream for humankind, for the world, for society. Holiness is a participation in the mission of social transformation, in sharing in the joys, the hopes, the anxieties, and the griefs of modern men and women all over the world. It means being engaged and involved in an imperfect world trying to reach common fulfillment for all humanity. For all of us Christians, we are called, gathered, disciplined, instructed by God, and sent to all the world to tell the good news. And this, my dear friends, is your Kalakbay at Katoto saying thank you, and God bless you.